People in ancient times held many beliefs about the world. These beliefs guided their daily actions. The beliefs concerned luck, omens, spirits, and proper behavior. What we might call superstitions today were simply part of life then. People observed these practices regularly. They passed them down through generations. The beliefs were taken seriously. They were part of how people understood and navigated their world. This narration presents many of these beliefs. They come from different cultures and different time periods. They are presented simply, without judgment. Each belief existed. Each one influenced how people lived. The beliefs are numerous. They covered many aspects of daily life. Here they are, one after another, in a steady flow. Household, threshold, superstitions. Many cultures believed the threshold of a home was significant. The threshold was the boundary between inside and outside. Spirits and luck could enter or leave at the threshold. Therefore, the threshold required attention. It required respect. People developed practices concerning thresholds. In ancient Rome, brides were carried over the threshold. They did not step over it themselves. This practice was important. If a bride tripped on the threshold, it was a bad omen for the marriage. Carrying her prevented this possibility. The custom was widely observed. It was considered proper. Failing to observe it invited misfortune. The Romans also believed one should enter and exit through the same door. Using different doors was unlucky. It confused the household spirits. The spirits protected the home. Confusing them was unwise. Therefore, people were careful about which door they used. They paid attention to their entrances and exits. In some cultures, sweeping dirt out the door after sunset was forbidden. The dirt might carry good luck with it. Luck accumulated in a house during the day. Sweeping it out meant sweeping away prosperity. The sweeping should be done earlier, or the dirt should be swept to the center of the room and removed another way. This protected the household's fortune. Placing a broom across a doorway was thought to prevent unwanted spirits from entering. The broom created a barrier. Spirits could not cross it. This was a simple protective measure. When visitors were unwelcome, or when negative influences were feared, a broom might be laid across the threshold. It was quiet protection. It required no words or ceremony. Some people would not step on the threshold itself. They stepped over it. The threshold was sacred space. It belonged neither to inside nor outside. Stepping on it was disrespectful to the household spirits. Children were taught to step over thresholds. The practice became automatic. It was simply how one entered a home. Spilling salt on the threshold was particularly unlucky in some traditions. Salt was valuable. It was also purifying. But on the threshold, spilled salt created confusion. It was neither inside nor outside. The protective power of salt was wasted. The spill should be cleaned immediately. Some people would throw a pinch of the spilled salt over their left shoulder. This counteracted the bad luck. These threshold beliefs shaped daily movement. People thought about how they entered and left homes. They paid attention to these transitions. The threshold was not neutral space. It was charged with significance. Respecting it meant respecting the home's spiritual boundaries. This was considered important. It was part of maintaining proper order. Sneezing generated many superstitions. A sneeze was a sudden, involuntary event. It seemed significant. It required explanation. Different cultures developed different beliefs about what sneezing meant and what should be done about it. The ancient Romans believed that sneezing could expel the soul from the body briefly. This was dangerous. The soul needed to return. Therefore, when someone sneezed, others would say a blessing. The blessing helped the soul return to the body. It protected the sneezer. This is the origin of saying bless you after a sneeze. The practice was protective. It was a kindness. In some cultures, the direction of a sneeze mattered. Sneezing to the right was lucky. Sneezing to the left was unlucky. People noticed which direction someone sneezed. They interpreted it as an omen. A sneeze to the right meant good fortune was coming. A sneeze to the left meant caution was needed. The direction was noted and remembered. The number of sneezes also carried meaning. One sneeze might mean one thing. 2 sneezes meant another. 3 sneezes meant yet another. The interpretations varied by culture, but the principle was consistent. The number mattered. People counted sneezes. They assigned significance to the count. Sneezing at the beginning of an endeavor was often considered a bad omen. If someone sneezed just as a journey began, it might be better to postpone. If someone sneezed as a business deal was being discussed, the deal might be unlucky. The sneeze was a warning. It suggested reconsideration. Some people took this seriously. They would delay or abandon plans after an ill-timed sneeze. Conversely, sneezing during a conversation could confirm the truth of what was being said. If someone made a statement and another person sneezed immediately after, the statement was true. The sneeze was divine confirmation. This belief existed in several cultures. People paid attention to sneezes during important conversations. The timing could validate or question what was said. Some people believed that sneezing before breakfast was lucky. It cleared the head for the day. It was a good start. Sneezing after meals was neutral. Sneezing at night before bed was sometimes thought to bring good dreams. The timing within the daily cycle affected the meaning. People noticed when sneezes occurred. They assigned appropriate interpretations. There were remedies if a sneeze seemed to bring bad luck. One might turn around 3 times. One might touch iron. One might say a particular phrase or prayer. These actions counteracted the negative omen. They restored balance. People kept these remedies in mind. They used them when needed. Sneezing, then, was not a simple physical act. It was an event with meaning. It required response. It provided information. People integrated these beliefs into daily life. They acknowledged sneezes. They interpreted them. They acted accordingly. This was normal. This was how one navigated the messages the body and the world provided. Moon phase beliefs. The moon changed in a regular cycle. This cycle was visible to everyone. The changes seemed to affect the world. Therefore, people developed beliefs about what should and should not be done during different moon phases. These beliefs guided agricultural work, personal decisions, and daily activities. The new moon was considered a time for beginnings. New projects should start during a new moon. Planting crops that grew above ground should be done when the moon was waxing, growing larger. The increasing moon would help the plants grow upward. This made sense to people. They observed the correlation between moon phase and plant growth. They planned their planting accordingly. The full moon was thought to affect human behavior. People became more emotional during a full moon. They slept less well. Strange events were more likely. The word lunatic comes from lunar, the moon. The connection between the moon and mental disturbance was assumed. People were watchful during full moons. They expected unusual occurrences. Cutting hair during a waxing moon was thought to make it grow back thicker and faster. Cutting hair during a waning moon would slow growth. People who wanted their hair to grow waited for the waxing moon. People who wanted to slow hair growth cut during the waning moon. Barbers and individuals followed these guidelines. The timing of haircuts was not random. Root vegetables should be planted during a waning moon, when the moon was decreasing. The plants would grow downward into the earth, following the moon's pull. This was agricultural wisdom passed down through generations. Farmers timed their planting by the moon. They believed it made a difference. Their experience seemed to confirm it. Medical procedures were sometimes timed by the moon. Surgery during a full moon was avoided when possible. Bleeding would be heavier. Healing would be slower. A waning moon was better for procedures. The body would cooperate more fully. Physicians considered moon phases when planning treatments. The moon's influence on bodily fluids was accepted. Starting a journey during a new moon was auspicious. The traveller and the moon would both be beginning their cycles. They would travel together. The journey would be successful. Starting during a waning moon was less favourable. The moon was ending its cycle. This could affect the journey negatively. Travellers tried to time their departures appropriately. Fishing was affected by the moon. Fish were more active during certain moon phases. The full moon brought fish to the surface. They were easier to catch. Experienced fishermen knew this. They planned their fishing trips according to the moon. The moon's pull affected tides and affected fish behaviour. This was observed fact. Women's cycles were associated with the moon. The connection seemed obvious. Both followed roughly monthly patterns. The full moon was thought to affect fertility. The new moon was thought to affect menstruation. Women paid attention to how their bodies aligned with the moon. The relationship was noted and discussed. Making important decisions during a full moon was sometimes discouraged. The full moon brought heightened emotions. Clear thinking was harder. Better to wait for the moon to wane. Better to decide when lunar influence was less strong. Important choices required calm consideration. The moon phase should support that calm. Preserving food had lunar timing. Making preserves during a waning moon was preferred. The food would keep better. Making them during a waxing moon risked spoilage. The moon affected moisture somehow. The waning moon drew moisture out. Food preserved then would be drier and would last longer. This was household knowledge. These lunar beliefs created a rhythm to life. People looked at the moon regularly. They noted its phase. They planned accordingly. The moon was a guide. It was a calendar. It was an influence to be respected and worked with. Life was coordinated with the moon's cycle. This felt natural. This felt right. The moon was always there, always changing, always providing guidance. Beliefs about dreams. Dreams were taken very seriously. They were not seen as random mental activity. They were messages. They were warnings. They were prophecies. Dreams required interpretation. People remembered their dreams. They discussed them. They made decisions based on them. Dreaming of teeth falling out was almost universally considered a bad omen. It predicted death in the family, or it predicted serious illness. The loss of teeth in a dream symbolized loss in waking life. People who had such dreams were worried. They prepared for bad news. They watched for signs that the dream was coming true. Dreaming of water had various meanings, depending on the details. Clear, calm water was good. It meant peace and prosperity. Muddy or turbulent water was bad. It meant trouble ahead. Crossing water in a dream was significant. It meant a transition. The ease or difficulty of the crossing indicated how the transition would go in waking life. Dreaming of the dead was important. The dead person might have a message. The dreamer should pay attention to what the dead person said or did in the dream. Sometimes the dead came to warn the living. Sometimes they came to ask for something, like prayers or offerings. Ignoring dreams of the dead was unwise. They should be taken seriously. Dreaming of snakes had complex meanings. In some cultures, snakes were positive, representing healing or transformation. In others, snakes were negative, representing enemies or danger. The snake's behavior in the dream mattered. A peaceful snake meant one thing. An attacking snake meant another. Dream interpretation required attention to detail. Dreaming of fire was powerful. A controlled fire, like a hearth fire, was good. It meant warmth and home. An uncontrolled fire was bad. It meant destruction. The size and behavior of the fire affected the interpretation. Dreamers described their fire dreams carefully. Interpreters asked specific questions to understand the dream's meaning. Dreaming of birds also had significance. Birds flying upward were good omens. They represented success and freedom. Birds flying downward or unable to fly were bad omens. They represented failure or limitation. The type of bird mattered too. An eagle meant one thing, a crow meant another. Bird dreams were common and were interpreted regularly. Dreaming of food could indicate future prosperity or current need. Abundant food in a dream was positive. It meant plenty was coming. Scarce food or spoiled food was negative. It warned of hardship. Some people believed you should never eat in dreams. Eating in a dream meant accepting something from the spirit world. This could be dangerous. Recurring dreams were especially significant. If the same dream came multiple times, it was trying to deliver an important message. The dreamer should pay extra attention. They should seek interpretation from someone wise. A recurring dream would continue until its message was understood and acted upon. Ignoring it would not make it stop. Some dreams were thought to be prophetic. They showed the future, but not all dreams were prophetic. Some were just the mind processing daily events. Knowing which was which required wisdom. Experienced elders could often tell. They asked questions about the dream. They considered the dreamer's current life situation. Then they determined if the dream was meaningful or ordinary. There were practices to encourage good dreams and prevent bad ones. Saying prayers before sleep helped. Placing certain herbs under the pillow helped. Sleeping with your head facing a particular direction helped. These practices were followed regularly. They created the conditions for positive dreams and spiritual protection during sleep. If someone had a nightmare, there were remedies. Telling the dream to flowing water would carry it away. Turning your pillow over and saying a protective phrase would prevent the dream from returning. Spitting 3 times after waking would dispel the dream's power. These remedies were known and used. They provided comfort and control. Dream interpretation was a skill. Some people were known to be good at it. Others consulted them about important dreams. The interpreter would ask questions. They would consider symbols. They would provide an explanation. This explanation guided action. If a dream predicted danger, precautions were taken. If it predicted opportunity, the opportunity was pursued. Dreams, then, were taken seriously as sources of information and guidance. They were not dismissed. They were examined. They were interpreted. They influenced decisions. This gave dreams significant power in daily life. People paid attention to their dreams. They gave them weight and respect. The dream world and the waking world were connected. Messages passed between them. This was understood and accepted. Animal omens and behaviors. Animals were closely observed. Their behavior seemed to convey messages about what was to come. Different animals had different significance. Seeing certain animals in certain ways was lucky or unlucky. People watched animals and drew conclusions. A black cat crossing your path was famously unlucky in many European traditions. The black cat was associated with witches and bad magic. If one crossed in front of you, you should stop and wait, or you should turn back. Proceeding would invite misfortune. Some people carried charms to ward off the bad luck if a black cat crossed their path. The belief was strong and widespread. In other cultures, black cats were lucky. In ancient Egypt, all cats were sacred. In Japan, black cats were considered fortunate. The same animal could have opposite meanings in different places, but within a culture, the meaning was consistent. People knew what a black cat meant in their tradition. They responded accordingly. Birds were significant omens. The direction of bird flight mattered. Birds flying from left to right were generally good. Birds flying from right to left were bad. The Romans paid particular attention to bird flight. They had official augurs who interpreted bird omens. Important decisions were made based on bird behavior. This was state-sponsored divination. Seeing a single crow was often unlucky. The rhyme, 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, reflected this. Multiple crows had different meanings. 2 crows were good. 3 had another meaning. 4 had yet another. People counted crows when they saw them. They noted the number and adjusted their expectations for the day accordingly. An owl hooting near a house often predicted death. Owls were night birds. They were associated with the spirit world. Their calls were eerie. When an owl came and called near someone's home, people worried. They watched for signs of illness. They prepared for loss. The owl's hoot was a warning they took seriously. Roosters crowing at unusual times was significant. A rooster should crow at dawn. That was normal. A rooster crowing at midnight or in the afternoon was strange. It was an omen. Something unusual was going to happen. The crowing disrupted the normal pattern. This disruption predicted other disruptions. Bees were generally lucky. A swarm of bees settling on your property was very fortunate. It meant prosperity. Bees produced honey, which was valuable. Bees also were hard-working. They symbolized industry. Welcoming bees was welcoming wealth and productivity. People were pleased when bees came. But bees entering a house was different. That was unlucky. Bees belonged outside. When they came inside, it was a warning. Some said it predicted a visitor, bringing bad news. Others said it predicted death. The bees should be gently guided back outside. They should not be killed. Killing bees brought worse luck. Spiders were treated differently across cultures. Some considered them lucky. If you wish to live and thrive, let the spider run alive. Killing a spider brought bad luck. Spiders caught insects. They were useful. They should be left alone. Other traditions saw spiders as unlucky or evil. The spider's web trapped things. This could symbolize entrapment for humans. Dogs howling for no apparent reason was a death omen. Dogs could sense things humans could not. If a dog howled mournfully, it sensed approaching death. The death might be in the household. It might be in the neighborhood. The dog was giving warning. People listened to dogs. Their behavior was meaningful. A rabbit crossing your path had various interpretations. Some saw it as lucky. Rabbits were fertile and quick. These were good qualities. Others saw it as unlucky if the rabbit crossed from a particular direction. The specifics varied. But people noticed when rabbits crossed their paths. They considered what it might mean. Livestock behavior predicted weather and events. Cows lying down meant rain was coming. Horses being restless meant a storm was approaching. Animals sensed atmospheric changes before humans did. Farmers watched their animals. The animals' behavior helped them prepare. This was practical observation combined with belief in animal sensitivity. Finding a dead bird was generally unlucky. A bird that died near your home was a bad sign. It might predict illness or misfortune. The dead bird should be removed respectfully. Some people would bury it with a small prayer or blessing. This showed respect and potentially mitigated the bad omen. Butterflies had mixed meanings. A white butterfly was often seen as the soul of a deceased loved one visiting. This was comforting. A black butterfly might be an omen of death. Butterflies in general represented transformation and change. Their appearance prompted reflection on what changes might be coming. These animal omens required observation and interpretation. People watched the world around them. They noticed animal behavior. They considered what it might signify. Animals were messengers. They connected humans to larger patterns and forces. Paying attention to animals was practical wisdom. It was also spiritual practice. The two were not separate. Salt superstitions. Salt was valuable. It preserved food. It enhanced flavor. It had religious significance. It was used in rituals. Many superstitions grew up around salt. These superstitions guided how salt should be handled and what its various uses meant. Spilling salt was unlucky. This belief was nearly universal. When salt spilled, the spiller should immediately throw a pinch over their left shoulder. The left side was where evil spirits gathered. Throwing salt there blinded them or drove them away. This counteracted the bad luck. Almost everyone knew this remedy. It was performed automatically when salt spilled. The origin of the spilling salt superstition might be practical. Salt was expensive. Spilling it was wasteful. Waste brought consequences. Over time, this became formalized into a superstition about luck. But the underlying truth was that carelessness with valuable resources led to problems. The superstition reinforced careful handling. Borrowing salt was problematic in some traditions. Salt should not be borrowed or loaned. If you had no salt, you should buy it or do without. Borrowing created a debt that was difficult to repay properly. Salt was too important. The exchange was fraught. Better to keep salt transactions formal and commercial, rather than casual and neighborly. Returning borrowed salt was even more problematic. Some said you should never return salt. If you borrowed it despite the taboo, you kept it. Returning salt returned the favor in a negative way. It could create a cycle of bad luck between the two households. The complications around salt exchange meant most people simply avoided it. Putting salt in the corners of a new home was a protective practice. The salt would absorb negative energy. It would purify the space. When moving into a new dwelling, salt was placed in each corner of each room. It sat there for a period of time, doing its work. Then it was swept up and disposed of. The home was now protected and clean. Salt could break curses. If someone believed they were cursed, salt was part of the remedy. They might bathe in salt water. They might sprinkle salt around their bed. They might carry a small pouch of salt. The salt's purifying power countered the curse's negative power. Salt was a defensive tool against malevolent magic. Placing salt on a corpse was done in some cultures. This preserved the body until burial, but it also protected against the corpse becoming a dangerous spirit. The salt kept the dead person at peace. It prevented them from rising or causing trouble. This was both practical preservation and spiritual protection. Sailors believed throwing salt overboard calmed storms. The salt appeased the sea spirits. It gave them what they craved. In return, the spirits would lessen the storm. Some sailors carried salt specifically for this purpose. When storms came, they threw salt into the waves. Whether this worked or not, it gave them a sense of action and control. Salt at a meal table should be passed, not handed directly. Handing salt, person to person, was unlucky. It created a negative connection between them. Instead, the salt should be set down. The other person should pick it up. This broke the direct transfer. It prevented the bad luck. People at meals were careful about this. A salt cellar tipping over at the table was a serious omen. It predicted a quarrel among those present. The meal would not go well. Relationships would be damaged. If the salt cellar tipped, people braced themselves. They tried extra hard to be pleasant and avoid conflict. They knew the omen and attempted to prevent its fulfillment. Throwing salt into a fire made it burn with a different color. The salt changed the flame. This was used in divination. The way the salt-fueled flame behaved provided information. A steady flame was good. A sputtering flame was bad. The colors seen in the flame meant different things. This was a simple form of scrying. New mothers were often given salt. The salt protected the mother and baby from evil spirits. It was placed near the bed. It was added to bath water. It was kept in the baby's room. The vulnerable time after birth required extra protection. Salt provided that protection. It was a standard gift and practice. These salt superstitions show how a common substance became laden with meaning. Salt was not just salt. It was protection, purification, and power. It was valuable economically and spiritually. Treating it carelessly or disrespectfully brought consequences. Treating it properly brought benefits. People integrated these beliefs into their handling of salt. They were careful. They were respectful. They used salt's power wisely. Mirror. Superstitions. Mirrors were mysterious objects. They reflected reality, but were not reality themselves. They showed the self, but in reverse. This strange quality generated many superstitions. Mirrors required careful handling and respect. Breaking a mirror brought 7 years of bad luck. This belief was strong and widespread. The 7 years came from an old Roman belief that the body renewed itself every 7 years. Breaking your reflection meant breaking your health for a full renewal cycle. The penalty was severe. People were very careful with mirrors. If a mirror broke, despite precautions, the pieces should not be kept. They should be buried or thrown into running water. The running water would carry the bad luck away. Burying the pieces put the bad luck into the earth, where it would dissipate. Either method was better than keeping the broken mirror pieces. Those pieces held shattered luck. Covering mirrors when someone died was important. The dead person's soul might be confused by their reflection. They might become trapped in the mirror, or they might take a living person's reflection with them to the afterlife. Covering mirrors prevented these problems. It was done immediately upon death, and the mirrors stayed covered until after burial. A baby should not look in a mirror before their first birthday. Seeing their reflection too early could stunt their development, or it could cause them to die young. Different traditions had different specific beliefs, but the general principle was consistent. Babies and mirrors should not meet. Parents kept mirrors away from infants. If two people looked into a mirror together, one would die within the year. The mirror could not hold two souls at once. One would be displaced. That person would die. People avoided looking in mirrors simultaneously. If it happened accidentally, there were remedies. Quickly turning away and saying a protective phrase might help, but it was better to prevent the situation entirely. Mirrors in bedrooms were sometimes considered unlucky. The soul left the body during sleep. If it saw itself in a mirror while wandering, it might become frightened. It might not return to the body. The sleeper would die or fall into a coma. Mirrors in bedrooms should be covered at night, or they should be positioned so the sleeping person was not reflected. Looking into a mirror by candlelight, especially at midnight, could reveal your future spouse. Young women performed this divination. They looked into the mirror in dim light. A face might appear behind their reflection. This was the face of the man they would marry. The practice was both exciting and frightening. Not everyone had the courage to try it. A mirror falling from a wall for no reason was an omen. Something bad would happen in that household. The mirror's unprovoked fall suggested supernatural interference. The household's luck had turned. People noted when this happened. They watched for subsequent events. Often they remembered the mirror falling when later misfortune occurred. The connection seemed confirmed. Newly married couples should not look in a mirror together during the first month of marriage. This could cause discord. The reflection would show two separate beings rather than a unified couple. The separateness might manifest in the marriage. Better to wait until the marriage was established before sharing a mirror's reflection. Some cultures believed mirrors should not reflect the sky or moon. This could trap the celestial body, or it could bring the celestial body's influence inappropriately into the home. Mirrors were positioned to avoid these reflections. Windows and mirrors were arranged thoughtfully. The supernatural implications were considered in household arrangement. Cleaning a mirror with a cloth used for anything else was unlucky. Mirrors required dedicated cleaning cloths. Using a cloth that had cleaned other things could transfer impurities to the mirror. The reflection would be contaminated. The person looking in the mirror would see themselves wrongly. This could affect their self-knowledge and their fortune. These mirror superstitions reflected deep uneasiness about reflection and representation. Mirrors showed the self, but not quite. The reversal, the surface, the strange duplication, all of this was unsettling. Mirrors existed at a boundary between real and unreal. They required respect and caution. Treating them carelessly brought consequences. People were careful with mirrors. They followed the rules that governed these uncanny objects. Weather prediction. Beliefs. Weather affected survival. Knowing what weather was coming allowed preparation. People developed elaborate systems of weather prediction based on signs and omens. These systems combined observation with superstition. The line between the two was not clear. Red sky at night meant good weather tomorrow. Red sky at night, sailors' delight. Red sky in morning, sailors' warning. This rhyme captured widespread belief. A red evening sky suggested calm. A red morning sky suggested storms. People looked at the sky and planned their next day accordingly. The belief had some meteorological basis, though people didn't know the science. The behavior of animals predicted weather. We mentioned this earlier with livestock. But there were many specific observations. Frogs croaking loudly meant rain was coming. Ants building their hills higher meant a harsh winter ahead. Spiderwebs covered in dew meant a fair day. Cats washing behind their ears meant rain was coming. The moon had weather significance beyond its phases. A ring around the moon predicted rain or snow. The moisture in the air created the ring. That moisture would soon fall as precipitation. The size of the ring indicated how soon. A large ring meant the rain was still distant. A small ring meant it was imminent. Clouds had meanings. Mare's tail clouds, high, wispy clouds, meant weather change was coming. Usually this meant rain within a day or two. A sky full of small, puffy clouds meant fair weather would continue. A grey, uniform cloud cover meant extended rain. Cloud reading was a skill. Experienced people could look at the sky and forecast accurately. Wind direction predicted weather. East wind brought dry weather. West wind brought moisture. North wind brought cold. South wind brought warmth. These patterns varied by region, but each area had its understood wind meanings. People felt the wind and knew what it portended. They prepared accordingly. If smoke from a fire rose straight up, fair weather would continue. If smoke hugged the ground or swirled, rain was coming. The air pressure affected smoke behavior. Low pressure meant incoming weather systems. High pressure meant stability. People didn't know about pressure systems, but they knew smoke behavior predicted weather. They watched their chimney smoke. Finding a large number of acorns or nuts meant a hard winter was coming. Trees somehow knew. They produced more food for animals to help them survive. People observed nut abundance. They prepared for difficult cold months if nuts were plentiful. This belief had some ecological basis. Mast years, heavy nut production, did occur periodically. If cows gathered in a corner of the field, a storm was coming. If they spread out, weather would be calm. Cows sensed atmospheric changes. Their gathering suggested they were seeking shelter and company. Farmers watched their herds. The cows' positioning informed the farmers' preparations. Dew on the grass in the morning meant a fair day. No dew meant rain was coming. Dew formed under certain atmospheric conditions. Its presence or absence indicated what those conditions were. Morning dew assessment was part of the daily routine. It helped plan the day's work. A rooster crowing before dark meant rain was coming. The changing air pressure affected the rooster. The rooster responded by crowing at an unusual time. People heard the unseasonable crow and looked for rain clouds. They brought in things that shouldn't get wet. When birds flew lower than usual, rain was coming. The changing pressure affected the insects birds ate. The insects flew lower. The birds followed them down. When birds flew high, fair weather would continue. Bird flight height was noted and interpreted. The conclusion guided planning. Rheumatism or old injuries aching predicted weather change, usually rain or snow. The pain came from pressure changes. People with chronic conditions became living barometers. Their pain levels forecasted weather. Others consulted them. "How are your knees?" wasn't just polite inquiry. It was weather prediction. Leaves showing their undersides meant wind and rain were coming. The wind from an approaching storm system disturbed the trees. The leaves flipped. Their pale undersides became visible. Observant people saw this. They knew what it meant. They secured loose items and prepared for the storm. Crickets chirping faster meant warmer weather. Slower chirping meant cooler weather. Cricket chirp rate actually does correspond to temperature. People noticed this correlation. They listened to crickets and adjusted their understanding of current and coming temperatures accordingly. These weather beliefs were practical knowledge combined with supernatural interpretation. The observations often had real meteorological value, but they were understood as signs sent by nature or by spirits. The practical and the mystical were intertwined. Weather prediction was both science and divination. People used all available information. Physical signs, animal behavior, plant signals, and supernatural omens all contributed to the forecast. This comprehensive approach made sense given how important weather was to survival. Beliefs about numbers. Numbers had inherent qualities. Some numbers were lucky, others were unlucky. The number of things, the number of times something happened, the numerical value associated with events, all of this mattered. People paid attention to numbers. They made decisions based on numerical omens and meanings. The number 7 was widely considered lucky and powerful. There were 7 days in a week. 7 was divine and complete. Things done in 7s were protected. 7 years of bad luck from a broken mirror. 7 generations of family. 7 knots in a spell. 7 was magical. It appeared repeatedly in folklore and practice. The number 3 was also powerful. Many spells and charms required doing something 3 times. Knock 3 times. Turn around 3 times. Spit 3 times. The 3rd time completed the action. It sealed it. 2 times were not enough. 4 times were too many. 3 was the correct number for magical effectiveness. 13 was unlucky. The reasons varied. 13 people at a table meant 1 would die within the year. This came from the Last Supper, where 13 people were present before Christ's death. Friday the 13th combined 2 unlucky things, Friday and the number 13. The combination was especially unfortunate. People avoided important activities on Friday the 13th. Some buildings had no 13th floor. The numbering went from 12 to 14. This avoided the unlucky number. People felt better without a 13th floor. Even though everyone knew the 14th floor was really the 13th, the renumbering provided psychological comfort. The number itself was avoided. 9 was significant in various traditions. It was 3 times 3. It had triple power. 9 days. 9 nights, 9 herbs, 9 knots. The repetition of 9 strengthened magic. It completed cycles. 9 appeared frequently in folk traditions and ritual prescriptions. 4 was unlucky in some Asian cultures. The word for 4 sounded like the word for death. Therefore, 4 was avoided. Buildings might skip the 4th floor. Gifts were not given in sets of 4. The phonetic similarity created the association. The association created the avoidance. The number 100 had completeness. 100 years. 100 guests. 100 flowers. Reaching 100 of something was an achievement. It was a full measure. Things counted in hundreds felt abundant and complete. The round number had psychological and symbolic weight. 0 was problematic before it was mathematically understood. Nothing was confusing. How could nothing be something? Before 0 became a number, its concept was unsettling. It represented absence and void. These were frightening concepts. The development of 0 as a mathematical tool took time, partly because of this philosophical discomfort. Odd numbers, and even numbers, had different qualities. Odd numbers were often considered unlucky. Even numbers were balanced and harmonious. Gifts given in even numbers. Flowers in even numbers. The pairing created balance. Odd numbers left something unpaired and unstable. Though this was not universal, some traditions preferred odd numbers for certain purposes. Counting certain things was forbidden. Counting your children invited the evil eye. Counting your money before a journey meant the money would be lost. Counting out loud during certain activities disrupted the flow. The act of counting could fix things in a negative way. Sometimes it was better not to know the exact number. The time of day in numerical terms mattered. 3 o'clock in the afternoon was holy. It was when Christ died. 3 o'clock in the morning was unholy. It was the opposite hour, the devil's hour. Midnight was a threshold time, neither one day nor the next. Numbers on the clock carried significance. Your age in numbers affected your fortune. Certain ages were dangerous. The 7th year, the 13th year, the 21st year. These transitions required caution and sometimes ritual protection. The number of years you had lived determined what to expect and how to behave. Steps taken had numerical significance. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. This pattern appeared in various contexts. The correct number of steps in a ritual mattered. Walking around something a certain number of times activated its power. The counting of steps and repetitions was precise. The number had to be right for the action to work. These numerical beliefs created a world where mathematics and magic overlapped. Numbers were not neutral. They carried power and meaning. People counted carefully. They noticed numerical patterns. They respected lucky numbers and avoided unlucky ones. This gave structure to decision-making and ritual practice. Numbers guided action. They provided a framework for understanding events and planning behavior. Beliefs about childbirth. Childbirth was dangerous for both mother and infant. Many superstitions surrounded it. These beliefs aimed to protect the mother and baby. They also tried to influence the baby's characteristics and future. The beliefs were numerous and detailed. Pregnant women should not look at ugly or frightening things. What the mother saw could mark the baby. If she looked at a person with a deformity, the baby might be born with a similar deformity. If she was frightened by an animal, the baby might have animal-like features. Pregnant women were encouraged to look at beautiful things. Beauty would influence the child positively. Pregnant women should not raise their arms above their heads. This could cause the umbilical cord to wrap around the baby's neck. The connection between arm position and cord position was assumed. Women avoided reaching high. They asked others to retrieve things from high shelves. This restriction continued throughout pregnancy. The position of the moon affected when birth would occur. A baby conceived during a waxing moon would be born during a waxing moon. Labor often began during a full moon. Moon phases pulled on the waters in the body as they pulled on ocean tides. This connection seemed logical. Midwives tracked the moon to predict birthing times. During labor, all knots in the house should be untied. This included hair braids, tied clothing, locked doors. The knots symbolically prevented the birth from proceeding. Untying them freed the birth. Everything was loosened. Everything was opened. This helped the baby come out. Family members went around the house untying and unlocking. Opening drawers and cupboards during labor served the same purpose. The open storage spaces symbolized the opening of the womb. Everything that could be opened was opened. This sympathetic magic helped the birth progress. It was a simple action that people believed made a difference. The caul, the membrane sometimes covering a baby's head at birth, was very lucky. A baby born with a caul would never drown. The caul should be preserved. It could be dried and kept. Some sailors bought cauls to carry with them as protection against drowning. A caul was precious and powerful. The day of the week a baby was born determined their character. Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday's child is full of grace. The old rhyme continued through the week. Each day imparted particular qualities. Parents noted the birthday. They had expectations about the child's nature based on it. The direction the baby first faced after birth mattered. Facing east was lucky. The baby would be blessed by the rising sun. Facing west was less fortunate. West was the direction of sunset and endings. The compass direction at birth influenced the child's fortune throughout life. Placing certain objects in a baby's hand predicted their future occupation. A coin meant wealth. A book meant scholarship. A tool meant craftsmanship. The baby's grip on different objects was tested. The one they held longest indicated their destiny. This was done as a game, but also taken somewhat seriously. The first bath required special water. Water with protective herbs. Water blessed in some way. Plain water was insufficient for the first bath. The water's quality protected the vulnerable newborn. It established a boundary between the baby and malevolent forces. Preparation of the first bath water was a ritual act. A new baby should not be taken outside until baptized or named. The baby was vulnerable to evil spirits and the evil eye. The naming or baptism provided protection. Before that ceremony, the baby stayed inside. If going out was absolutely necessary, protective charms were used, but staying in was safer. The placenta was treated carefully. In some cultures, it was buried in a significant place, under a tree, in the garden, at a threshold. Where it was buried affected the child's connection to that place. The placenta was part of the baby. Its proper treatment honored the baby and ensured good fortune. Complimenting a new baby directly could bring the evil eye. Admiration attracted malevolent attention. If someone had to compliment the baby, they added a protective phrase. God bless them, or may they be protected. This deflected the evil eye. Or they pretended to criticize the baby. What an ugly baby! This reverse psychology confused evil forces. The number of candles at a birth had significance. An even number was proper. Odd numbers were avoided. The candles provided light during birth. Their number should be balanced and harmonious. This supported a good outcome. The midwife counted candles carefully. These childbirth beliefs tried to control an uncertain and dangerous process. Birth could go wrong in many ways. These practices gave people a sense of agency. They could do things to protect mother and baby. They could influence the outcome. Whether the practices actually helped or not, they provided comfort and structure. They were something to do in the face of fear and helplessness. They connected the community to the birth. Everyone participated in the protective practices. This shared effort supported the new mother and welcomed the new life. Iron and metal superstitions. Iron and certain other metals had protective and magical properties. Metal came from the earth. It was transformed by fire. This origin and transformation made it powerful. Beliefs about metal guided its use and treatment. Iron repelled fairies and evil spirits. Fairies could not touch iron. They could not cross iron barriers. Placing an iron object in a baby's crib protected the baby from being stolen by fairies. An iron horseshoe over a door protected the house. The horseshoe should hang points up to hold luck in. Points down allowed luck to drain out. Touching iron counteracted bad luck. If something unlucky happened, touching iron immediately helped. Touch wood and touch iron served the same purpose. The physical contact with these materials grounded negative energy. It prevented the bad luck from taking hold. People touched iron instinctively after close calls or minor misfortunes. Finding a rusty nail was lucky. The rust showed the nail was old. Old things had accumulated power. A rusty nail could be carried as a charm, or it could be driven into a door frame for protection. The rust didn't diminish the nail's power. It enhanced it. Age and iron combined created strong protective energy. Blacksmiths had special status. They worked with fire and metal. They transformed raw materials. This gave them power. Blacksmiths could break curses. Water used to cool hot iron had healing properties. This water could cure ailments. People collected it from blacksmith shops. They drank it or used it to wash afflicted areas. A knife given as a gift required a coin in return. Otherwise, the knife would cut the friendship. The recipient should give a penny or other small coin to the giver. This payment turned the gift into a transaction. The cutting symbolism of the knife was neutralized. The relationship was protected. Stirring with a knife brought bad luck. Knives were for cutting, not stirring. Using them incorrectly invited misfortune. Spoons were for stirring. Each implement had its purpose. Respecting these purposes maintained proper order. Violating them created disorder that manifested as bad luck. Crossed knives on a table predicted a quarrel. The crossing created negative energy. If knives accidentally crossed, they should be immediately uncrossed. Someone should move one knife. This prevented the quarrel the crossing would otherwise cause. Table settings were arranged carefully to avoid crossed knives. Dropping a knife meant a male visitor would come. Dropping a fork meant a female visitor. Dropping a spoon meant a child would visit. The particular utensil's symbolism determined who would arrive. People noted dropped utensils. They expected visitors accordingly. Often visitors did come, which reinforced the belief. Nail clippings and hair should not be left where others could find them. Someone with your clippings or hair could use them in magic against you. These body parts retained connection to you. Someone with ill intent could harm you through them. Clippings and cut hair should be burned, or they should be buried. This prevented magical misuse. Keys were made of metal and had their own superstitions. 3 keys on a ring together brought luck. The keys represented the 3 aspects of life: love, health, and wealth. A single key falling from a ring meant one aspect was leaving. The key should be found and replaced immediately. the symbolic loss could become literal loss. An iron pot must not be cleaned with ashes from certain woods. The wrong wood's ashes could contaminate the pot. Food cooked in it would taste wrong, or it would bring bad luck. Cleaning required the right materials. Each household knew what could and could not be used for their iron cookware. These metal superstitions gave iron and other metals active power. Metals were not passive materials. They affected the world. They protected. They connected. They communicated. People respected metal. They used it carefully. They followed the rules governing it. This ensured the metal's power worked for them rather than against them. The physical properties of metal, its strength, its permanence, its transformability, supported beliefs in its supernatural properties. Food and eating. Superstitions. Food sustained life. Therefore, food had power and significance. How food was obtained, prepared, and eaten mattered. Superstitions guided every aspect of food. These beliefs protected people and ensured continued abundance. Bread should not be placed upside down. This was very unlucky. Bread represented life and sustenance. Inverting it inverted those blessings. Some said it invited poverty. Others said it brought death. Everyone agreed it should not be done. Bread was always placed right side up. If someone accidentally set it upside down, it was immediately corrected. Starting a new loaf required making the sign of the cross on it before cutting. This blessed the bread. It thanked the divine for providing it. It protected those who would eat it. The sign was made with the knife before the first slice. This practice continued for generations. Bread was sacred. It required acknowledgement. Spilling milk was unlucky. Milk nourished. It came from animals that needed care. Spilling it was waste. It suggested carelessness or disrespect. The spilled milk could not be cried over. Another saying that reflected acceptance of the loss. But preventing the spill was better. Milk was handled carefully. An egg with 2 yolks was a sign of good fortune. Nature had been doubly generous. Finding a double-yolked egg was lucky. Some said it predicted a wedding. Others said it predicted twins if a pregnant woman ate it. The double egg was noted and appreciated. Its occurrence was considered meaningful. Stirring food counterclockwise brought bad luck. The stirring should go clockwise, following the sun's path. Counterclockwise was against nature. It invited disorder. Cooks stirred clockwise automatically. They had learned this as children. The direction of stirring mattered. It affected the food's energy and the household's fortune. A knife accidentally dropped while preparing food meant a male guest would arrive. If the knife stuck upright in the floor, the guest would be unexpected. If it fell flat, the guest was already invited. The knife's landing position refined the prediction. Cooks noted how dropped knives fell. They prepared mentally for visitors. Onions should not be cut at night. This invited weeping into the household. Onions naturally cause tears. Cutting them after dark brought those tears into the night and into dreams. Onion cutting was daytime work. After sunset, onions were left whole. This prevented bringing unnecessary sorrow into the home. Sharing a meal created bonds. But accepting food from an enemy could allow them to harm you through the food. The food carried their intention. Eating it brought their intention into your body. One should be careful about whose food one accepted. In uncertain situations, polite refusal was safer than risk. Pregnant women's food cravings should be satisfied. Denying a craving could mark the baby. If a pregnant woman craved strawberries and didn't get them, the baby might have a strawberry-coloured birthmark. Families tried to provide whatever pregnant women wanted. It protected the developing baby. The first fruits of a season should be offered to spirits or deities before humans ate them. This showed respect. It acknowledged that abundance came from powers beyond human control. A small portion of the first berries, first grains, first vegetables was set aside. It was placed on an altar or left outside. Then humans could eat. The offering ensured continued abundance. Eating in the dark invited evil spirits to share your meal. Light should always be present when eating. Even a small candle was sufficient. But eating in complete darkness was dangerous. Spirits were attracted to food. Light kept them at a distance. The light protected the diners. If bees refused to thrive at a household, it meant someone there had committed a serious sin. Bees were pure. They would not stay where evil resided. Bee failure was a moral judgment. The household had to examine itself. Someone needed to confess and make amends. Then bees might return. Wasting food brought poverty. Every bit should be eaten or used. Throwing away good food was throwing away blessing. The waste would return as want. People scraped plates clean. Leftovers were saved and eaten. Nothing was casually discarded. Respect for food meant using it completely. These food superstitions made eating a careful practice. Food was not casual. It was sacred. It was powerful. It connected people to divine provision and to each other. The rules around food reinforced social bonds and spiritual awareness. Following the rules showed gratitude and respect. This ensured continued blessings and protected against want. Beliefs about death and burial. Death was a threshold. The moment of death and the period immediately after required careful navigation. Superstitions guided how the living should handle death. These beliefs protected both the living and the dead. A dying person should not be left alone. Someone should always be present. This comforted the dying person. It also ensured their soul departed properly. An unattended death was unfortunate. The soul might become confused. It might not find its way to the afterlife. Someone should witness the passing. At the moment of death, windows should be opened. This allowed the soul to leave freely. A closed room trapped the soul. It might linger, unable to escape. Opening windows helped the soul depart. It also let in fresh air, replacing the air of sickness and death with clean air. Stopping clocks at the time of death was important. The stopped clock marked the moment. Time in the house stopped with the person's life. The clocks would be restarted after burial. Until then, they remained stopped. This honoured the dead and marked the transition the household was experiencing. Covering mirrors prevented the dead person's soul from being trapped. We mentioned this earlier. The soul might see its reflection and become confused. It might try to enter the mirror. Covered mirrors were safer. They protected the departing soul and the living who remained. The body should never be left alone before burial. Someone should sit with it constantly. This was called a wake. People took turns. They kept vigil. This respect honoured the deceased. It also prevented evil spirits from disturbing the body. The continuous presence provided protection. Carrying the coffin out feet first was essential. If the head went first, The dead person's spirit could look back at the house. It might beckon others to follow. It might be reluctant to leave. Feet first meant the deceased faced forward, toward their destination. They did not look back at the living world. The route to the grave should not be retraced. The funeral procession followed one path to the burial place. They returned by a different path. This prevented the ghost from following the living back home. The one-way route confused any lingering spirit. It kept the dead from returning inappropriately. Burial should occur as soon as practical, but not at certain times. Burial during rain meant the deceased's soul was troubled. Burial at night was avoided when possible. The dead needed to see their way to the afterlife. Daylight burial was proper, though these preferences gave way to necessity when required. Plants growing on a grave showed the deceased was at peace. A bare grave might indicate an unquiet spirit. Families tended graves. They wanted plants to grow. The growth symbolized life continuing. It suggested the dead person's spirit was settled and calm. If a grave sank, another death in the family would occur soon. The sinking earth suggested the grave wanted company. It was opening to receive another body. This omen was feared. Graves were filled firmly. They were maintained. A sinking grave caused anxiety and watchfulness. Hearing your name called by a voice you recognized, but seeing no one, meant your death was near. The dead were calling you. They wanted you to join them. If this happened, you should not respond. You should pretend not to hear. Acknowledgement hastened your death. Ignoring the call postponed it. A dog howling outside a sick person's room meant death was imminent. The dog sensed the approaching transition. It mourned preemptively. When this happened, family gathered. They prepared for the end. The dog's howl was a reliable warning. These death beliefs structured the transition from life to death. They provided protocols. They ensured respect for the dead. They protected the living. They addressed fear and uncertainty with action. There were things to do. The doing provided comfort and control. It acknowledged the significance of death while managing its disruption to the living community. Protective charms and practices. People surrounded themselves with protections. Charms, actions, words, all served to ward off evil and attract good. These protections were layered. Multiple safeguards were employed simultaneously. One could never be too careful. Wearing red thread was protective. The red thread could be tied around a wrist or ankle. It could be sewn into clothing. Red was a powerful color. It represented life and blood. Evil forces were repelled by it. The thread should be given by someone who cared for you. A mother's red thread was especially powerful. A witch ball, a glass sphere, often colored, hanging in a window, trapped evil. Malevolent spirits were attracted to the shiny surface. They entered the ball and became trapped. They could not escape. The ball protected the household. It needed to be hung in a prominent window where approaching evil would see it. Bells on clothing or attached to animals scared evil spirits. The ringing disrupted harmful magic. It announced presence clearly. Spirits preferred secrecy. Bells prevented secrecy. Children wore bells. Livestock wore bells. The sound was protective as well as decorative. A rowan tree planted near a house protected that house. Rowan was a sacred tree. Witches and evil spirits could not pass it. Having rowan close by created a barrier. Its berries could be carried as pocket charms. Its wood could be carved into protective amulets. Rowan was powerful protection. Garlic hung near doors and windows kept vampires away. This belief was especially strong in Eastern Europe. Garlic's strong smell and taste indicated its power. Evil beings were repelled by it. Garlic was both food and protection. It served dual purposes without conflict. A horseshoe, hung properly, collected and held luck. We mentioned this earlier. The horseshoe combined iron's protective properties with its lucky shape. Used horseshoes were better than new ones. The horse's energy had charged them. Finding a horseshoe was fortunate. Using it wisely brought continued good fortune. Carrying salt in a pocket protected travelers. The salt could be thrown at danger. It could purify contaminated space. A small pouch of salt was portable protection. Travelers kept it with them. The salt's presence was comforting. Its use was straightforward if danger appeared, making the sign of the cross protected against evil. This Christian practice was nearly automatic. When frightened, sign of the cross. When seeing something unlucky, sign of the cross. When passing a dangerous place, sign of the cross. The gesture was quick. It was effective. It called on divine protection. Turning one's clothing inside out confused evil spirits. If you felt you were being followed by something malevolent, you turned your jacket or shirt inside out. The reversal disrupted the spirit's tracking. You became a different person. The spirit lost its connection. This was emergency protection. A 4-leaf clover was extremely lucky. Finding one was rare. The finder should keep it. It brought good fortune. It protected against evil. The clover could be pressed and kept in a wallet or book. Its presence continued providing luck. 4-leaf clovers were treasured discoveries. Carrying an acorn brought youth and vitality. The acorn represented potential. It would become a mighty oak. Carrying it meant carrying that potential. The carrier would age slowly. They would maintain strength. An acorn in a pocket was simple, effective protection against aging's effects. Knocking on wood after saying something positive prevented jinxing it. The wood connection grounded the good thing. It prevented evil spirits from hearing and interfering. Saying, "knock on wood," while actually knocking reinforced the protection. This practice was reflexive for many people. These protective charms and practices created layers of safety. No single protection was absolute, but multiple protections overlapped. They reinforced each other. People felt safer with these safeguards in place. The charms were tangible. The practices were actionable. Together, they provided a sense of agency in a dangerous world. Conclusion. These superstitions formed a comprehensive system. Together, they explained the world. They provided guidance for navigating daily life. They addressed fear. They created hope. They gave structure to uncertainty. The beliefs were not questioned. They were simply true. Everyone knew them. Everyone followed them. Deviation was risky. Why risk bad luck when following the rules was simple? The rules were known. They had been tested by generations. They worked, or seemed to work. When bad things happened despite following the rules, there were explanations. Perhaps the rules were not followed perfectly. Perhaps some other factor intervened. Perhaps it was simply fate, unavoidable, regardless of precautions. The system was flexible enough to accommodate exceptions without being disproven. When good things happened after following the rules, this confirmed their effectiveness. The rules worked. The protection functioned. The luck arrived as predicted. These positive outcomes reinforced belief. They encouraged continued observance. Children learned these superstitions from their earliest years. They saw adults practicing them. They were corrected when they violated them. The beliefs were absorbed naturally. They became second nature. By adulthood, the practices were automatic. They required no conscious thought. Travelers encountered different superstitions in different places. The same act might be lucky in one culture and unlucky in another. This diversity did not undermine belief. It simply showed that spiritual forces operated differently in different places. Local knowledge was essential. One should follow local practices when traveling. Some people were more superstitious than others. Some followed every rule meticulously. Others were more relaxed. But even the skeptical usually followed major practices. Better safe than sorry. The cost of observance was small. The potential cost of non-observance was large. Basic precautions made sense. These superstitions are historical. Many cultures no longer observe them. Modern understanding has replaced supernatural explanation with scientific explanation. We know why mirrors reflect. We understand weather systems. We recognize that coincidence is not causation. But the impulse behind superstition remains. People still knock on wood. They still avoid black cats sometimes. They still make wishes. The human need for control, for protection, for understanding persists. The specific beliefs change. The underlying needs do not. Looking at these old superstitions shows us how people thought. It shows us what they feared. It shows us what they valued. The beliefs reveal the cultures that held them. They are windows into different worldviews. The superstitions also show human creativity. People observed the world. They found patterns. They created explanations. They developed responses. The superstitions were intellectual work. They were cultural achievements. They helped people survive and thrive in difficult circumstances. We may smile at some of these beliefs now. They seem quaint or silly. But they were serious then. They mattered deeply. They structured life. They provided meaning. They deserved respect in their time. They deserve respect now as historical phenomena. These were some of the superstitions people took seriously in ancient times. There were many more. Every culture had elaborate systems. Every individual had personal practices. The superstitions were countless. They were varied. They were persistent. They have been presented here plainly, without drama, without judgment, simply as they were, as beliefs that people held and followed, as part of human history, as evidence of how people have always sought to understand and control their world.